hands. Yes, you could say they were big. You could say, in fact, they were very big. And the worst of it was, they got bigger. Whenever he was nervous or self-conscious, his hands would grow bigger and bigger until they were the size of beach balls or even bigger. So he could never sit in a dentist's lobby or wait for a job interview without tearing the pages of the magazine he was reading or knocking over the potted rubber tree in the corner with his hands, his big hands. And once, when he was in high school, he was on a date with a girl. She was a very beautiful girl. They were at a movie. It was a Chuck Norris movie. And he was wondering whether he should try to put his arm around her, and of course, as soon as he wonders this, his hands start growing bigger, and they grow bigger and even bigger until they're about the size of portable TV sets. I'll be back in a minute, he whispers, and he sets his 7-Up down on the floor, and of course he spills it, and he hands her the box of popcorn they've been sharing, and of course he spills popcorn in her lap. And he goes up to the restroom to run some cold water over his hands, his big hands, thinking that that might shrink them back down again. But he can't even get his hands under the faucet. They're so big by now. And of course, water splashes out all over him, and of course now he can't go back out of the restroom because he's got water spots all over the front of him, and it'll look like he pissed his pants. So there's nothing to do, of course, but go sit in one of the stalls and wait for his pants to dry. And so he's sitting there, and he's sitting there. And then, of course, into the restroom comes some kid with his father, and the kid is not at all well behaved. The kid, in fact, is tearing around the restroom like something just that minute let out of hell. So, of course, the guy with the big hand standing in the stall looks down and sees this kid's face looking up at him from under the stall door. And, of course, the kid jumps up and hollers, "Daddy, Daddy, there's a man sitting in there with his pants still on." And of course, the father asks him, "What?" And the kid repeats it, and of course, the father says something under his breath about all the weirdos out in public these days, and about going to get the manager. And of course, the guy's hands by this time are the size of one of the minor planets, and he can't even get the stall door unlatched. And so, of course, here comes the man and his kid, and this time they've got the manager, and of course, the manager is standing there banging on the stall door saying, "Hey, what's going on in there?" So by the time the guy with the big hands explains everything to the manager and calms down enough for his hands to return to normal, he walks out of the restroom just in time to see this girl, this very beautiful girl, out in front of the theater, climbing into the car with her father, whom she's called to come get her. The movie is over. The lobby is empty. The woman in the ticket booth is counting the cash, and all you can hear is the hum of the fluorescent light inside the popcorn machine. And now, tonight, this guy is older, and his life has begun to look the same way it will look 5 years from now, maybe even 10 years from now. And tonight, he's had to leave a party because he was standing in the kitchen trying to open a beer, and his hands, his big hands, knocked the Cuisinart off into the sink, cracking a colander. So now, he's walking down the damp street, in and out of the circles of light from the street lamps, and he's pulling his collar up around his neck, and he knows what they're doing now back there at the party. They're all sitting around the living room, listening to bad jazz, smoking some cheap green pot that somebody grew in their basement, saying, "Hey, who was that guy with those big hands?" Okay, 2 more short pieces. Here's a poem. It's entitled "Life on the Island of Eels." If you like eels, then it's really not so bad. If you don't like eels, then it is.
That's amazing.
One last piece. I've done a couple of kids' books, and I thought I'd put you to bed with one of my kids' stories. This is entitled Grandpa's Overalls. And I want to thank you for your kind attention and your hospitality tonight. I know you had a long day, and I appreciate your spending your evening with me. Early one morning, Grandma came downstairs just in time to see Grandpa's overalls hop down off their nail on the kitchen wall, slip out the door, and sneak away across the back porch. Grandma raised such a ruckus and knocked Grandpa, me, and the rest of us clean out of bed. Then we ran to the window, and sure enough, there they went, Grandpa's overalls, hightailing it past the clothesline and over the barnyard fence. "Quick after him," Grandpa cried. "I've got work to do today, and a man can't work wearing nothing but his long-handled drawers." So there we went, down the stairs and out the door, across the yard and over the fence, Grandpa, Grandma, me, and the rest of us chasing along behind. But Grandpa's overalls were nowhere to be seen. Grandpa was about ready to pop a stitch. "I've never missed a day of work in my life," he said, "and I ain't about to now." Then we heard a commotion from the chicken house and ran around the barn. "Come back here, you rapscallions," Grandpa hollered. "I've got work to do today." And he took a flying tackle at them, but off they ran and disappeared. Well, by then, the neighbors had heard the uproar, and here they all came. Uncle Eck and Aunt Lou Ann, Granny Jakes and Old Man Hickam, Cousin Sadie and Preacher Sims, the Bunks, and their whole passel of little bunks. "What's wrong, neighbor?" Mr. Bunk asked. "Well, my overalls clean ran off," cried Grandpa, "and I've got work to do today." Uncle Eck nodded sympathetically. "Yep, and a man can't work wearing nothing but his long-handled drawer." Just then, we heard a hubbub from the barn. Grandpa took off, and there we went, Grandma, me, and the rest of us tearing along behind, and there went Grandpa's overalls across the garden, into the potato patch, down through the hay, out into the cornfield, and finally up through the apple orchard, where they took a big leap high over the treetops. Off they went, up into the clouds, swirling and whirling, clear out of sight. Well, we just stood there, Grandpa, Grandma, me, and the rest of us shaking our heads, some of us scratching our heads, wondering what would happen next. Nothing did. Finally, Old Man Hickam said, "Well, there's a sight you don't see every day," which was true, but Grandpa was fit to bust. "Now," what he said, "I've got all this work to do, and here I stand wearing nothing but my long-handled drawers." But then Granny Jakes rolled up her sleeves, relit her pipe, and tied down her bonnet and said, "Well, it's time we all got to work now, isn't it, neighbors?" So Uncle Eck brought the chickens in, and Aunt Lou Ann milked the cow. Cousin Sadie plowed the field, and Granny Jakes and Preacher Sims harvested the hay. Old Man Hickam weeded the garden. The Bunks and their little bunks dug a whole passel of potatoes. But a man can't work wearing nothing but his long-handled drawers, so Grandpa spent the whole time sitting by himself in the smokehouse. I peeked in on him once, and he didn't seem to be minding it too bad. When the work was all finished, Grandma called us in. "Supper time." We called Grandpa out on the way to the house and showed him all the work we had done. He didn't seem too disappointed. So there we all went, tired but happy, Grandpa, Grandma, me, and the rest of us, up the lane and across the yard, around the house, just in time to see Grandpa's overalls and Grandma's nightgown slipping through the kitchen door and sneaking away across the yard. "Gracious me," called Grandma, "a body can't sleep without her long-tailed nightie after him." So there we all went, Grandma, Grandpa, me, and the rest of us chasing along behind. Thank you.